Yo, 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 everyone. Welcome into the Trade of Black podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Shad Dales. Happy Friday. What a week it's been. A long list of companies. I think for the most part, I think we got to be happy with the fundamentals that a lot of these companies have produced. Obviously, we want other things to materialize over the coming months when it comes to Washington and some stuff related to Florida, but that will come in due time. But for now, you got to focus on the things that are in front of you, which a lot of companies have demonstrated this week. So, we will finish things off again here today with TerrAscend. We're also going to touch on Planet 13, Curaleaf, and Jushi's latest numbers. So let's dive right in here on a Friday morning and wrap this week up with a strong earnings report. We got a few interviews next week, but let's welcome to Anthony Varrell, TDR co-host. Happy Friday morning. And here we are, back at it.
Yeah, it's been a busy week every day this week, and next week's going to be just as busy. We got a busy show on Monday. But it's been good so far. A lot of good prints, a lot of positivity around the sector, and it's onward and upward.
Yep. So we are featuring right off the top here this morning, TerrAscend, which trades on the TSX under the ticker symbol TSND. Let's welcome in their CEO, Ziad Ghanem, back to the podcast. Ziad, good to see you. Happy Friday morning. Probably a long day for you yesterday, but you're back at home. What'd you put in yesterday? About 16 hours?
Yeah, yesterday was long. Good morning, everyone. Hey,
Good
Shad. Hey, Anthony. Hope all's well. It was long, but we're used to this. What was more challenging is waking up this morning with a blocked tear duct causing a puffy eye and feeling under the weather. I called Anthony and said, as long as we don't scare away your listener, we'll be in good shape. I found a friend. I called Jason Wild, say, hey, can you fill in for me? But I quickly realized he has a graduation for his older son from college. I said, you know what? We're sticking with it, and we are doing it.
There you go, buddy.
The show must go on.
Show must go on. So it wasn't any like roadside rage yesterday, driving home and getting into a scrap with somebody on the road. It was just get the work done, get home, get to bed, woke up with a puffy eye, and here we are this morning, right?
That's right. I drove for 4 hours, got home midnight. Promise Keith or Jason did not punch me in the eye, just the allergies.
Well, listen, I know that, man, what a roller coaster ride this industry's been the last couple of weeks with a lot of the stuff that came down, obviously, last week. We saw stocks spike up. They get retracted, within the next 24 hours. And then, bam, now we're into earnings season. So we want to dive into some of these latest numbers with your latest Q1. And some of the notable numbers included net revenue of $80.6 million, which was an increase of 16.1% year over year. Gross profit margin was 48%, down slightly, but EBITDA from continuing operations was $8.7 million compared to $6.1 million in Q1 of 2023. I also want to highlight that you reported your 7th consecutive quarter of positive cash flow. So we, are talking to people right now, as much as we want all these other things to come to materialize out of Washington. Right now, it's all about focusing again on the business and producing fundamentals. So if you had to categorize or basically outline this latest earnings report in so many words, what would it be?
Yeah, look, we talked about it last time, is getting the fundamentals strong and really, in today's environment, especially when you think of margins, when you're starting from COGS to revenue to gross margin to OPEX to EBITDA. There's not one magic bullet. It's just a combination of 20, 30 things that companies who do very well will end up winning and build companies that are sustainable for the long run. You need to win with consumers and acquiring new customers.
Yep.
You have to win with retaining customers and patients. You have to win with quality, and that helps with 1 and 2. You have to have the right brand portfolio. You have to continue to innovate and launch new products in order to create a relationship that is based on excitement and loyalty with those products. You have to have a strong wholesale business that lives next to retail business so you can expand your footprints. You have to have service that is friendly, fast to consumers who visit you, whether it's B2B or whether it's in your stores. And if you do that, then you win in all segments, and you'll see your business perform well. And that's how I characterize this quarter.
Yeah, and consistency, I think what you guys could continue to demonstrate, as I said, at the 7th consecutive quarter of positive cash flow. Before Anthony gets into a list of his questions, I do want to say, like, fundamentally, you're performing it, knocking out of the park in the, the markets that you're currently in and operating in within the certain states. But at this time, like, are you considering, or does it make sense at this time to potentially explore into like new states, like, especially with some of the, Ohio obviously is coming to market, Pennsylvania with obviously rec on the horizon, and then obviously Measure 3 is going to be on the ballot come November. But as far as like expansion, like, is there like, are companies considering like that, such as yourself right now?
Yeah, yes. Look, in June next month we are going to celebrate our 5th year anniversary being in the U.S. So just
Yeah,
in the short five
yeah,
years,
Yeah.
now I am honored to have spent 2.5 years of those 5 years with TerrAscend. But if you think of that short period, I'm very excited. I'm very proud of what the team has done under Jason's leadership, with Keith being here the most of the time, really building those strong fundamentals, those efficient revenue on a relatively uh, low revenue base. And
Yeah.
and what we are trying to declare and what we're trying to promise, and we said it on the last earnings call, we said it
yep,
yesterday, and we'll prove it soon. The next chapter of our company is growth via attractive and accretive M&A,
hmm.
by going in new states and by transitioning from being deep and not wide to deep and wide, and by creating uh, or taking those fundamentals and creating not only one of the best companies in the industry, but also one of the biggest. So we have our eyes focused. We have our eyes on that prize. We are focused on accomplishing this, and we're pretty stubborn about it.
Wow, good to know. Anthony, go ahead.
One of the things that stood out to me most was the G&A expenses. On a dollar basis, they were flat year over year. And then on a percentage basis, you actually had improved them drastically year over year. Is that a testament to the strategy of centralized operations in Michigan and PA to service those jurisdictions? And I mean, can we expect to see top and bottom line growth without SGA or G&A going up if something like Ohio were to come on, and
Yeah,
leveraging those centralized ops in a state like Michigan?
yeah, Anthony, you described it well. It's creating those regions similar to what we have in the Northeast.
Yeah,
So let's just describe what happened to our GNA. We grew revenue by 16% quarter over quarter.
yep.
Our GNA, absolute dollar GNA, were flattish on
Yeah.
16% increase in revenue. And that is the benefit of the scale. And that's why we are excited of creating a Midwest region, similar to a Northeast region. And as we grow, this is when you see that next level of margins efficiency driven by GNA that will yield in better EBITDA margin. So we will continue to run the company. And from a percentage perspective, this
Yeah.
quarter, we improved quarter of quarter, like described, from 37% to 32%. So we will continue to run the company around that 30%. And as I said, first 5 years were to get to that level that we are very proud of, very happy with, generating free cash flow, paying down debt. But then that next chapter is going to be creating more efficiency while revenue goes up, margins improve, G&A becomes more efficient, better
Yeah.
efficient, and that will create better cash flow. And that's something we declared 2 years ago. We said adjusted EBITDA's numbers are great, but the real measure is cash flow from operation and free cash
Of
flow.
course.
And that's what we did this quarter. We had 10 million or so free cash flow, and we paid our debt down by that much.
And then keying in on margins, I mean, wholesale has become a big part of the equation. We're hearing language about wholesale in New Jersey, language about wholesale in Maryland. From a wholesale perspective, are you more focused on bulk flower sales, finished product sales? As I know, one commands more margin than the other, and I think that's something we really haven't talked about, is the focus of the wholesale business for a lot of the MSOs from a granular point of view.
Yeah, you're right. The mix is shifting a little bit heavier on the wholesale side, and that's healthy. That's having
Yeah.
an extra leg of the stool, and that is. But from finished products versus bulk flower. The majority of our wholesale is finished product, and it's driven by the demand on our products and our brands. I said on the call yesterday, for wholesale to be successful, you need to have two things. You have to have a ground game, where you have a team that is selling, creating penetration, using data-driven facts to convince the newcomers, the non-vertical operators, that here's why I have to dedicate some of my shelves to that company. So that's one, and we do that very well. We've done it in Pennsylvania a long time ago, and we continue to do that in New Jersey, and then we're growing it in Maryland. The second thing is you have to sustain, and you have to continue to exist on those shelves. And then the buyer or the customers or the operator is not the one who decide that, and it's not us who decide that. Who really decide that is the patient and the customer. And how they decide based on quality. They decide based on the brand, on the portfolio variety that they can shop, the innovation that create that pull. And I feel we do very well. Combining those two is what's given us that growth in wholesale that we described yesterday.
Yeah. Quality and brand is big. And you saw the video, but I was down at the NFL draft in Detroit a couple weeks ago. I was very impressed with how many people are familiar with the Gage brand within the state of Michigan, where you achieve 40% gross margin for the second consecutive quarter. So walk me through on what you're seeing in Michigan, because like I said, it was great to see the amount of people that are familiar with the brand.
Yeah, I felt a little FOMO when I saw your video when you were walking the street in Michigan. But Michigan is a great state. Michigan is part of our strategy. We said it that we wanted to, when we got into Michigan, the gross margin was in the low 20s. I believe it was 22%. We decided,
wow, I didn't realize it's grown that much.
And we said we want to get to 40%. And the thesis was we get to 40%, and then in an unlimited state, if you can run a business, and to get to 40%, you have to have everything I described: the quality, the brand, and then you heard it on the street, the recognition by the customers where they can buy and pay for that quality brand. So we used all that combination that I shared to get to 40%. We were, for the second quarter in a row, at 40% gross margin. And now, in order to really create sizable profit in Michigan, now you need the scale. Now that the fundamentals are right, now that the gross margin at 40%, now you can add to your 20 stores another 10, 15, 20, 30 stores, and really have the scale of unlimited licenses that will allow you to pour profit, versus being maybe at a 60+% gross margin with only 3 stores in other states or 4 stores. So that combination is what will allow profit to come in Michigan.
Explained well. Go ahead, Anthony.
And then obviously Michigan's a big market for you guys. I mean, Pennsylvania, what are you hearing from a legislative perspective? I mean, ears to the ground. Is there any color you can give? Because I mean, we get a lot of mixed signals coming out of PA, and it seems like a lot of start-stops are going on.
Yes, it's accurate. There has been a lot of start-stops, but I think there's a green line that is obvious. Let me share with you some of the things that happened up to yesterday before we went on our earnings call. But here are some of the facts. Ohio is going recreational. New Jersey has gone recreational. Pennsylvania is neighboring. Pennsylvania is neighboring those states, and then we have tax money that is leaking outside of the state, and it's sizable, and the governor talked about it. Also recently, we've heard the news about rescheduling and around what's going to happen, and a positive environment that will give a momentum and has given momentum to Republicans in the state, where they said, if the FDA and the DEA feel this way, then there's no reason for us to hold back. You have an election year that is coming. You have a governor that has asked for it. All this has yielded to a bill that is being discussed on the floor today, and bill that is supported collectively by all of us as an industry. And I'm so proud of this. We all have put some money together and collectively to educate the public in Pennsylvania, to work with our legislators. And then there's an alignment. That alignment from the industry is creating and
Yeah.
alignment from the politicians that now it's coming to life. And now how the production of that bill and the approval of that bill will happen is what we're waiting for. Just yesterday, a PA Republican senator said that the state is getting close to legalizing cannabis, but
That's
the
encouraging.
job will be done only if the House and the Senate leaders sit down with Governor Shapiro. So I feel confident that that first part of the year of 2025 is when we will see that happening. The bill that I mentioned, collectively, we moved the date even to October or November. So it's definitely a positive environment. I feel pretty confident that this is happening here in early 2025.
So beginning of
And then-
next year.
yeah.
Huh.
That would be something. And then keying in on Pennsylvania, what are your thoughts on your current footprint there? I mean, does more CapEx need to be deployed? Is that also a market that you're evaluating from an M&A perspective ahead of adult use? And I mean, do you see that as being one of the big growth drivers for the overall enterprise moving forward?
Yeah, as I said, we have 5-year anniversaries. We're only in 5 states, and we accomplished what we accomplished. With one of them, Pennsylvania, have not gone recreationals yet, and we just talked and how we expect it to go here at the beginning of the new year. The great news for us in Pennsylvania, and the reason why we're so excited about Pennsylvania is we have a fully built cultivation and production facility. It is as big as all our cultivation and manufacturing facilities in all our states. CapEx is fully spent, so it's we use a small percentage of it. So just with a flip of a light or a switch, we would be fully operational, and we are planning for that as the time progress towards that adult use launch. So that is on, and then we have a team that is super experienced, that is part of the Northeast team that have launched New Jersey through adult use. They have taken Maryland through adult use, and so we feel pretty fortunate, very strong in there. Quality in Pennsylvania is as good as New Jersey and Maryland. We have the same strain varieties, so that is on the cultivation and production, and I feel pretty good about this. From a retail perspective, we have 6 stores in Pennsylvania, and you ask about M&A. We do plan to go deeper in Pennsylvania as we learn more about the timing. There's an opportunity through the bill that is being discussed that we could get an additional 3 stores, so that would be organic growth. But then also there is an opportunity through local M&A conversation, but also national and global M&A discussions that Pennsylvania could be included on those. And those are the transformative deals that we've talked about, but also the state-by-state deals. So I could see us in Pennsylvania going through adult use with everything I described from cultivation and production, also with a heavier or more penetration from retail door perspective.
Okay, and there is a potential organic opportunity to grow incrementally. Okay, nice. That is definitely good to know.
You brought up rescheduling and some topics in certain states about taxes. I'd be curious to know, like you, Jason, Keith, if you spoke internally, like, I don't want to speculate. I don't want to bring up, rescheduling, but have you guys ever had discussions where how much money you potentially could save if 280E was indeed removed?
Yeah, we have. Keith has that on a table in detail that we discussed. And hey, look, we took the discussion further. Not only how much we save, but then also what do we do with that money that will go into the bottom line. And then, we're talking about M&A. We're talking about shares buyback. We're talking about paying down our debt. We've been very clear about, look, below the EBITDA line, there are taxes and interest, and both of those are punitive. And then we spend a lot of time thinking how we can do better in those two.
I think the encouraging thing is that as this industry does shift, you guys have a plan in place as to how you'll pivot when those things start to happen, which is the encouraging thing. It's just Washington just doesn't move at the same pace as what we do in this industry, but we keep our ear to the ground and keep marching forward, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And you just have to be ahead of it and ready for it, because unfortunately it's imposed on us.
I know.
Relatively to lose a lot of time by just waiting for Washington. So we cannot afford as a sector, as companies in this industry, to add any wasted time. We just have to be ready as soon as we hear. So you're spot on.
Yep. Where does time go? It's been almost a year since
Yeah.
you listed on the TSX when we were down in Toronto last early July. But now that we approach a year, if you had to put it into words, are you happy, obviously, with what the listing has provided? And I know you guys have, being listed on a senior exchange in Canada, you're going to drive some institutional interest. You've had some trips over to Europe as well. What's the feedback like? Because as we're seeing right now, is there new money coming into the space? And a lot of the feedback that we get is that there's interest, but they're still on the sidelines. Like, what are you seeing and hearing?
Yeah, look, Jason and I go through a constant exercise together. We call it yesterday, today, tomorrow, and then we make decision. We we blaze the trail, and we say, all right, if we look back, would we do it the same way? Would we change anything? And this is not only for TSX. This is for anything. Whether today we are winning small or we're winning big, we say what we've done a year ago, knowing what we know today. Would we change anything today of what we did yesterday to influence tomorrow? So we've done that exercise with the TSX, and the answer is we would not change anything, and we will still pave the way the same way to be the first one in there for multiple reasons that we are capitalizing on today that I think will also shape tomorrow. So here's what we've done yesterday. We've built a great relationship with the TSX that have been a pleasure to work with and have been extremely supportive, and we value that relationship. We know that volume has been impacted for everybody in the industry with the scene, with reform, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look at our volume, only from a TSX perspective, we saw a clear spike on this. We, being on the TSX, allowed our stock to be treated like a currency in some of our M&A conversations, especially in Maryland. And it does continue to behave this way today, where our door is being knocked on and individuals are asking and accepting stock deals because of our currency and our stock. So you look at all this, and that's the reason we feel that it's been a great move for us. And how does it influence tomorrow? Jason was busy last week. I don't know if he shared And or not, talking to U.S. exchanges and saying, now that rescheduling conversations are taking place, what does it take? And we're learning that there are two steps. One of them is rescheduling. There's another one that is needed for that to happen, but we will continue to keep an eye on the U.S. exchange in order to take advantage of that as well.
Yeah.
Did I answer the question, Chad?
Yeah.
That answers the question completely, because I know my conversation last year with both of you, it's like when I was driving with Jason, he'd said, look, this is a conversation that began back in 2018. And then 2023 is when actually, you were listed on the TSX, and this is all part of the process, right? You got to start these conversations now, and this is where the infrastructure is being built. But, a lot of investors in this space want uplisting in the US to happen yesterday. But here we are today to have those conversations, to get them uplisted for tomorrow, right? I love that term. But, it's all part of a maturing industry, to say the least. But kudos to obviously you guys to start those conversations. Anything else you want to touch on, Anthony?
No, I mean, that's actually a very good point that Ziad just brought up. I never thought of it in terms of actually being a higher quality currency, being listed on the TSX to leverage in M&A deals. Because from an optics perspective, the paper being listed on a major exchange versus the OTC, I'm assuming does carry weight with counterparties from an M&A perspective.
Very good point. I know that Mr. Varrell here is going to be meeting up with Mr. Wild later tonight. You guys are going, I think it's some event with Mr. Cobb. So you guys have fun. But as usual, Ziad, good seeing you. And tell the rest of the team that we say hi. But congrats, obviously, on the strong numbers again this quarter. And more importantly, let's keep in touch.
Thank you, boss. So good seeing you.
You as well.
Thanks, sir. Good to see you.
Yes.
Thanks, Ziad. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Got some good feedback. Christopher Brady, good to see you, sir. I have more confidence in this CEO than I do most others, for sure. Very in tune with the product, for sure. Ziad is a workhorse. And I know with his previous career, with what he used to do, was with Walgreens, correct?
Walgreens, that's correct.
Yeah.
Big thing to me, which is what I brought right off the top, is to keep SG&A consistent, or to keep SG&A flat on a dollar basis, but drop it on a percentage basis as you're raising revenue. That's impressive.
Can you elaborate just a little bit more on why people should understand that? Because that is a good point.
Because ballooning your expenses usually is growing your expenses is usually a function of growing revenue. I mean, it's hard to grow revenue without growing expenses, especially when you are incrementally adding people, as cannabis is it's a heavy human capital intensive business. So for them to be able to grow and not raise SG&A is a testament to the financial engineering as well as the discipline within the management team.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. That was our featured interview here in the Traded Black podcast here this morning. This is, like I said, Friday morning, 11 a.m. A lot of companies who basically highlighted this week, and we don't let up. Let's actually go into the wire and now bring up Jushi, who actually was at Aftermarket yesterday. They came out. Highlighting some of their numbers. I know we're going to quick run through some of these numbers. Curaleaf with Matt Darren. He's going to be on the podcast on Monday, correct, Anthony? I think you confirmed that yesterday.
Matt Darren will be joining us on Monday, as well as Dan Aarons from MSOS, as well as Jushi Channon from the Cannabis.
Yes.
So we will have a packed show on Monday.
Yeah. Some good conversations to be had. And I know there's a lot of people asking questions with what went on yesterday in New York related to cannabis, but we will have that in depth for you, speaking to the president of that company to kind of give you an understanding of the rationale behind that and what to anticipate moving forward. But speaking of Jushi, numbers included revenue dipped to $65.5 million on the quarter. Reasoning, they said, was a tough market in Illinois. What are you seeing in Illinois right now? Because I feel like this has been a challenging market, not only for them, but a few companies in the space.
I mean, I'm not seeing anything directly, as it's not something I'm looking at on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, Illinois has been a lot of part of the narrative of drawdowns in retail sales. I mean, it's been oversaturated from a retail perspective. I think it was overbuilt from a cultivation perspective, causing drops in the wholesale pricing of flower. I can't really speak to the tune of has that price normalized or is it on an uptick, as I haven't really looked into the data in a while. But I mean, Illinois is a volatile market for some operators that are in there.
Yeah. Gross profit margin actually did improve significantly to 49.4% in Q1, which reached $32.2 million, as the company remains optimistic about future growth despite current market challenges. But, we're dealing with a lot of that. But most importantly, gross profit margin seems to be very favorable for a lot of companies in this quarter from what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, they had margin expansion. They had margin expansion from a gross profit perspective. They also had EBITDA margin expansion. They finished the Q with cash of $30 million. They're up to 17 dispensaries in Pennsylvania, and their current debt position's at $217 million for when we spoke and when we met and sat down with Trent and Jim at Benzinga. I know that was going to be a focal point here in the coming quarters. So I'm curious to see how that draws down going into year's end and what happens with the Sunstream maturity that's coming up. I know that Jim said he wanted to tackle that either by refi or just knocking it out. The one thing that stood out to me was, from a line item perspective, was they said they introduced 443 new SKUs in the quarter.
440.
I'd really like to dive in with the management team as per the rhyme and reason behind this and how it's impacting the business. Because for me, it just seemed like a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because their branding isn't analogous, or their branding is not congruent from market to market. I think they have different branding from a retail perspective in different markets, but 443 SKUs just seems like a lot of product.
That's a lot.
Like tons. I'm going to probably reach out to Jim or Trent for comment on that, but that was one of the data points that I thought were interesting. I mean, it wasn't a blowout quarter for them. It wasn't a bad quarter for them. I think it had some ups and it had a couple of muted numbers, but I mean, we march on. Can't really say much about the print.
Yeah. I know this outcome would not reflect on their numbers, but let's see how things develop in that state of Virginia and how that transpires over the next few months. But as it stands right now, adult use is, from what I understand, the governor, it's not going to be on the ballot.
Virginia's not happening anytime soon, from what I can gather. PA's got a better shot, which they're now up to 17 retail locations in PA.
Yeah. Getting lots of likes about the Gage brand in the state of Michigan. Guap is back from his vacation. He's going to be coming up in just a moment as we wrap up into the wire here. And as well, we got Dan the Chart Man on to talk about various charts, including TrueLeave and GTI. Incredible earnings this week. But again, not a lot of new money in right now because their stocks pretty much remain flat. But let's now shift to Planet 13. Some of the highlights included revenue dip, which was $22.9 million, which reflected an 8.2% decrease from $24.9 million same time last year. So I got to ask, Anthony, when I looked at some of the tourist and tourism numbers of the city of Las Vegas, they reported last year the highest airport traffic that they've ever experienced in the city. So as tourism has definitely regained and recovered since COVID, why do you think with all the tourism that's taking place in this city that this dispensary saw a revenue dip?
I would have to guess increased competition and or not being able to meet the consumer for pricing power. I would guarantee you that that building is very expensive to maintain on a monthly basis. That being said, thinking about it, I don't think I've ever seen a lot of sales or discount bargain pricing at Planet 13. And I would just have to guess that the consumer might be going elsewhere. This is all speculative, but I mean, the numbers don't lie. They're down 8.2% was it year over year or sequentially quarter over quarter in the revenue. But I mean, yeah, I would have to guess pricing pressure and or just increased competition. In the surrounding area from the Strip.
Probably one of the main reasons why they're opening up that consumption lounge, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're doing well to diversify the experience at the Superstore. I'm sure that consumption lounge will bring on incremental business. I don't know if it's going to be able to impact the top line like what you've seen as far as attrition and sales. But also, I think it's very pertinent to keep in mind that they just closed on officially the VidaCann acquisition. So they will have Florida coming into their numbers. I don't know if it's going to be as soon as this next quarter, but those numbers will trickle in. And I mean, VidaCann were private, so don't have too much into the actual numbers of the business, but I yet to be determined if that acquisition is going to be accretive or not.
Got some positive people on here this morning. Guys, Florida will win Amendment 3. And yes, the topic of Florida remains front and center when we bring up this podcast almost every day. But yes, and that's obviously a market that Planet 13 plans to, develop as far as consumption lounges. But good conversations that you have with Larry back at MJ Biz. We'll try to reach out to them and see if we can get them on for a podcast. Next up, before we jump into with Dan the Chart Man, let's bring up Curaleaf, who's now classifying themselves as a multi-country operator.
Yeah. I mean, this is, I got a chuckle out of this. This is Boris being a showman. Boris is great. Boris is keeping the brand on trend. He's keeping people talking about the business. This is his showmanship, and this is just him being a good chairman and a steward of the brand in Curaleaf. There was a lot to like. I mean, there were some things we have questions about in terms of the loss for the quarter. Love to get Matt's point of view on things like Florida, and we will be able to get his point of view on Monday when we take a deep dive into the numbers. Really would like to get some guidance as per the German market and how that's shaping up. And I understand as well that they're potentially evaluating, if not made an entryway into the hemp-derived beverage business, which I think is going to be huge moving forward. And I think that's a smart move for them, as that is something that can scale coast to coast unencumbered from a product's perspective. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that Boris and Matt both had the foresight and the vision to go into that product category first out of any of the MSOs, to my knowledge, that I've seen. But like I said, we've got Matt coming on Monday. I'll have plenty of questions in regards to this last print, and we can dive in deep. We can dive in deep to the numbers come Monday.
Sounds good. Matt Darren on the podcast, Traded Black, Monday at 4:00, along with Dan Aarons from MSOs. And who's the other one? Oh, Jesse from the channel.
Jesse from the Cannabis.
Good stuff. All right, this is Traded Black podcast here on a Friday morning, especially as I always say, people like if you can, smash that like button, leave lots of comments below. Let us know what you think of the overall week, some of the guests we've had on, some of the feedback that you provided as well. Don't forget to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. If you want to see all the recent reports in depth, make sure to check out our lead financial writer, Bill McNarlin, who's got all the stories in depth on all the big takeaways from each earnings report. You can log on to thedalesreport.com as well and subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. That wraps up segment number 1, Into the Wire. Arns, cue up the music. It's time to bring on Dan the Chart Man, the chart guys. Happy Friday morning. How are you, sir?
I'm great. Glad to be back. How you guys doing?
Not bad. It's been a really busy week, to say the least, which I'm sure you've been paying a little bit of attention to some of these earnings reports. And I know what a report by TrueLeaf. That was a strong quarter, to say the least. But let's jump right into it. First charts of the day here with Dan the Chart Man on a Traded Black on a Friday morning as we bring up MSOS. What are we seeing? Any concerns?
I mean, yeah, this is the time of the cycle where people stop liking me. They like me when I say things they want to hear, and they start trashing me when I say things they don't want to hear. And so, again, I'm just following the momentum, obviously, at this point. And ever since the sell-off day, it's been momentum to the downside. And
yeah,
we opened at the high of yesterday to the penny first thing. We instantly dropped from that level. Bears love when that happens. Low risk, short off resistance. We break the low of yesterday, so now our new daily lower high is set. 945 is now the most important short-term resistance for me. And we're looking back at our recent low where we just came from, 876. So we have two new short-term levels, but this is a bear flag on the daily time frame. And so the burden of proof is on the bulls. Bulls have to prove to us that this is not a bear flag, because right now this is a bear flag, and there's a lot of space for an hourly lower high to be the result of the next bounce. And so we're just at a point right now where the burden of proof is back on the bulls, and they're just not proving a whole lot. And as you mentioned, everybody's pumped about the earnings releases of Green Thumb and TrueLeaf specifically, but it's not impacting prices. And I'll talk once we get to these other charts in just a second here. The end of the day dump yesterday in the last couple minutes on these names just is such a shining example of the issues of liquidity being an OTC name. And it's just, this is why I can't trade these OTC names, because of the lack of volume and liquidity. I guess we'll just go right into TrueLeaf here and show exactly what I'm talking about. Let's go to the 5-second chart, which is really zoomed in, and look at yesterday's action. And so this means every candle is 5 seconds of trading. And the end of the day yesterday, a thing that I'm observing that's changed, we've become accustomed to the end of the day. Sometimes we sell off real hard in those last 5-10 minutes. And it's almost like market makers are pulling their bids now. They're saying, all right, we know they're going to do this, and I don't want my shares filled on a dump. And so you have this thing where, this 5-second candle is 23,000 shares of volume. And you can see it goes all the way up to hitting, 1150, 1170. And then you have 500 shares the next 5 seconds hitting at 1129. So we're into the last minute. The ask is 1170. The bid was 1160. And then it just disappears. And the bid's now 1129. And so you've got essentially 3% of space just disappearing, zero bid support. And it requires 500 shares. What's that? $6,000 to drop the price 3%. And it's just, this isn't normal price action. This isn't normal supply and demand. And it can't be until we uplist, which is why you hear people talking about it so much. But it is essentially the last 60 seconds of action and $300,000 of trading dictating, what the candle shapes up as. And anyways, that's my rant on the issues of liquidity. And it's certainly nothing new in this sector, but Green Thumb saw the same thing. And the bounces right now, these are potential daily bear flags. TrueLeaf's holding on a little bit better than MSOS thanks to the earnings reaction. And here's Green Thumb breaking the low of yesterday already. So Green Thumb's got a new short-term resistance at 1347. We're looking down at $12 support. And the only way the bulls can prove anything to us is into next week. Hold $12 and break 1347. If they don't do that, we're not going anywhere. and we're going to fade back down to where we were pre Schedule 3 headline.
We are getting to that part of the game, aren't we? Where the ATM is spitting out no more money, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the lack of liquidity is great when there's supply, or when there's demand outweighing supply, and we can go up 100% off the lows in the span of 2 months or whatever.
Yeah.
But we're at the opposite side of that pendulum swing, and now it's just a question of how long does that last. And again, I keep talking about how in the absence of volume, the broader market sentiment is going to have a pretty big impact on this sector over the summer, in my opinion. And it's just waiting for the volume to return, because without the volume, we're not going anywhere.
No.
Very important point you made last Friday is the overall market, and could we see new all-time highs this summer? But that's what we will follow, obviously, closely. Let's now switch to senior exchange companies, and without further ado, CGC Canopy.
Yep. So this is reminding me of, just the stair step drop, which is every single day is a lower high, and we break that pattern at 9:57. We had a nice little move up yesterday, but again, we're just giving it all right back. We knew a daily lower high is the most likely scenario. What we didn't know is how big a bounce is it going to be? Are we going to bounce? Are we going to regain half of what we lost and tighten up? Or is it going to be, this is where I use Fibonacci retracements, and I won't go too in depth here because it's, Google Chart Guys Fibonacci's for an in-depth video about it. But again, this is a bear flag. This bounce retracement is so short-lived.
Yeah.
Bears jumping right back on it as fast as they can. Same deal as far as, we failed to break the high of yesterday by 4 pennies. That gives the bears the level to short off of. If you short right under it, you put your stop right above it. You got a very low risk, high reward setup. And those bears are being rewarded today on both MSOS and CGC. And so support's down at the low of 876. If we break 876, we're looking at the Schedule 3 headline day low of 813. But what bulls are hoping is, we don't want to see this same thing where we just slow bleed and give it all back. But burden is on bulls to regain some momentum. Yeah. I'm at the point where I'm now back to cash in this sector, and I'm not trying to nail any bottoms. I'm not trading against momentum. I'm waiting. Again, people think technical analysis is predicting. It's reacting. I'm waiting to react when I see something from the bulls telling me it's time to get back in, whether it's volume, price trends changing, things like that. And until that happens, I just have no urgency to get back into this sector. And that's going to remain the theme until volume changes.
So you're back in cash with this industry right now.
Yeah, I used the bounce here as a second chance where, I compared it to the last time around where this one caught me by surprise back here. This is my second chance to take some off the table on that little bounce, and then we slow bleed. So this one catches me by surprise. This little bounce here to $10 is my second chance to take some back off. And now are we going to do that, daily downtrend for a few weeks? And again, you just have to remember that my mindset, being a professional trader, I know that I'm going to be close to the computer and I'm going to be able to get back in when I want to. People that aren't professional traders, their mindset is, well, I can't watch every day. I don't want to, I got to hold a position so that when it happens, and I get that there's differences between those two. And so I'm not saying everybody should be all cash right now, but I just know that me being very reactive and very attentive, it's just, I would rather buy 20% higher than these levels with momentum at my back, knowing that we're heading up in an uptrend versus, trying to nail a bottom counter trend.
What about the long-term holders? You don't want to give investment advice, but it's just like there's a potential, obviously, that we could hit, lower lows than what we're experiencing here today. But for people that do have a position in this company that we head into these summer months, and like you said, we have to pay attention closely to the overall market. This potentially, like you said, if there's no liquidity being involved, we could see this go down even more and bleed out more over the next few months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I would be surprised. Again, for me, the next event, fundamentally speaking, is late summer into the fall, into the voting season, Florida rec, all that. Maybe Schedule 3s, concrete, things like that. And so I would be really surprised if it would require significant broader market fear and weakness for us to head back to the all-time lows before then. I would be surprised for that to happen. That would shock me. But again, it doesn't mean, let's just use MSOS as an example. So here we stand at $9, we'll call it. We came from $5 why can't we drop to 7? I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but, it's not a stretch of my imagination to imagine that we, trade within this range of 5 and 11. We topped out at 11, 5 and 11 can just chop around there in the summer and into the fall. And so, again, for me, there's opportunity cost in my capital. I can be using my capital elsewhere. I can be using it to earn 5% interest risk-free. So that's my mindset.
Last chart I wanted to bring up, and you brought it up last week, was SNDL. You liked the way it was performing. And early on, I didn't see the last couple of days, but early on, it was showing some pretty good support compared to a lot of other companies in the space. But where are we today?
Yeah, I mean, that relative strength followed through a bit in the sense that we broke the headline reaction high. How many names can we say that about? The answer is very few. I think GRWG might have been another one. But what we didn't break is the high of how long? Many months. That's the highest level that we've seen in years. 2 and a half or whatever. So we failed 267. That's the most important resistance. We did have a bearish earnings reaction yesterday where, we dropped pretty decently. And the bulls really want to. Let's go to the weekly. Again, we have so many of these tightening weekly ranges on the tier 2 names that I've been pointing out on this show, whether it's TSNDF or ARYWF. And so now SNDL is potentially giving us the same thing where we've got the big weekly move, the higher low, fail resistance. We might just tighten up like this, for another month plus. The most important support is 175. That's a long ways away. So it's a very wide range that we can trade within. And just bringing that up real quick, AYRWF as the example, here we are. That key support of 210 is coming back into play. And it will be red flags for these tier 2 names if these tightening weekly ranges that have been shaping up for the entirety of the year break bearish. So some support tests are incoming here for the sector in the next few weeks.
Buckle up is the understanding I'm getting here, but at least we know where we sit and what to expect in the next couple of weeks. But I'm not going to sit here and say we're 100% accurate, but at the end of the day, it's just knowing where you are and where you're going is obviously going to get you better prepared. But always appreciate you checking in. Dan is super good at what he does, writes Christopher Brady along with R.A. Morris. Dan, keeping it honest, please never change. Good stuff. Enjoy the weekend, and we will watch this closely. And as usual, if anybody wants to learn more about what you provide, they can log on and find you where?
Chartguys.com or at Chartguys on Twitter. We've actually got a new website page we're going to launch here at the end of the day, which is just an educational roadmap. We have so much content over the last decade, it's easy to get lost, but it's just a little step-by-step guide. Do this first, then do this, then do this. So keep an eye on our Twitter, and maybe tomorrow morning I'll post that link and a description about it.
Well, if you can, before you this podcast ends, send us the link and we'll leave it in the comment section as well for all of our viewers. But always appreciate you checking in, and we'll check back in with you next Friday.
All right. Have a great weekend, guys.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Well, that was I'm not surprised by what he just shared and what we can expect. But
I mean, a lot of the market's red right now. MSOX is down 8%. It's SNDL is down 4.5%. I mean, it's a red Friday, so we'll see how we close. But
it's interesting, like how you play this. I'm not saying we're going to reach all-time lows. That's not where I'm going with this, but it's interesting that some people, such as a professional trader, is now in cash.
It would be something if we got to all-time lows. I mean, you're talking about Truly being below $4.
Yeah, let's not go there. Guess what? As much as it's a red day and it's a Friday, Arns, can you?
It's time for. It's time for everybody's favorite Friday segment, Mic Drop with Guap.
He's back.
Hello.
He is back.
Greetings, Earthlings.
What is up, my friend? How was the trip?
I'm back with the finest of tweed flat caps, grown and handmade with wool from the Hebrides Islands. So yes, I'm happy to be back. I feel like I'm all caught up now, and I'm ready to share about 3 takeaways, a bold prediction, and a teaser.
All right, I'll bring this music down.
Thank you.
Go down. Go down, background music. All right, I'll bring it back up.
Scotland was awesome. Thanks for the time, guys. I drove a 25-foot camper around the cliff sides of the Highlands and spent a few nights in the Isle of Skye, where it was the best hiking of my life.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. First thing I got to ask you, though, when this whole rescheduling announcement came out, like, was it a couple hours? Was it a day or 2 days? Like, what were you were disconnected? Like, how much time?
I was completely off the grid. We only had data on my wife's phone. So I didn't check Twitter, price action, nothing for a week and a half. Came back to reality, turned in the camper, bought this flat cap, had the finest scotch I've ever had in my life. And I'm sitting in a pub with a bunch of Canadians. We were the last people in the pub. And it was at that moment that the announcement hit. I still didn't have internet, though. I go to the train station, turn on Wi-Fi, and get like 100 notifications. So I realized I was celebrating, and I didn't even know it. You know, I finally treated myself to a drink of scotch after white knuckling it through the Highlands. So
that's amazing.
It was. I found out probably an hour or two after it actually hit, given the time shift.
So
was there any cannabis available in Scotland?
No. Well, okay. You know,
I know you're on a tolerance break, but if you wanted it, did you find any accessible cannabis?
I did not seek it out, but I'll tell you, there are some, beach towns that seems like, this is the kind of place I would grow it. But I don't want to get into the laws there, but it is a very bad idea to drink and drive in the Highlands. We're talking narrow lanes on cliffs. And they are not too tolerant of having any THC in your system, even in your saliva. They'll take it back for blood tests. So I didn't risk it. I was getting high on life and high on. I didn't need any cannabis to enhance that.
Did you see any of those Highland cows?
Oh, of course, yeah.
I want one of those.
I wanted to go snuggle and pet them, but I can't.
I know. I'm gonna have one eventually.
My brother in New Hampshire, his next door neighbor, has a couple longhorns and a bunch of Highland coos.
Yeah. The Highland cows are sick. The brown ones. What?
Where would you keep that in Florida?
I could move 30 minutes west and where I grew up, and you can have just
keep it indoors in a climate controlled greenhouse. Yeah.
There's horses and cows, ostriches, emus. There's all sorts of shit real close to me.
All right. So I got three takeaways after I got caught up here. I know we're running late, but did I miss any big news or anything?
Yeah,
DEA,
exactly.
On a random Tuesday, no one predicted that, leaks it.
Yeah.
There was great spaces from Shane Pennington, really getting everyone up to speed. I highly recommend everyone check that one out with Pablo, getting everyone up to speed on what to be expected, any predictions. You can kind of just, there's what's to be expected and then there's what's going to happen, right? So check out that one. Also, bravo to you guys getting Nancy Mace on short notice to celebrate the news. It's really a news leak. I'm not sure how much mainstream media coverage there's truly been until it really, really hits. We start getting some more official headlines.
Well, the day of, it did make CNBC.
Oh, it was on CNBC, CNN. Fox News, CNN. It was everywhere.
There you go. So my heart went kind of in the same space where Don's was. I didn't bring me to tears or anything. I'm too much of a robot to care that much. But it did make me think about my dad working on drug policy in the 70s. Made me think of my grandfather with Parkinson's who could have seen relief. All my veteran friends who want this to be legitimized, want the research to be done, want to be able to file an insurance claim and get their medicine, not necessarily smokable cannabis, but other form factors. So huge win for the patients and the users out there like myself. And also a big victory for the industry and investors, right? I'm glad I missed that Tuesday to Wednesday price action. That was I don't know how I would have been able to handle that. I know they said keep emotions out of it, but it would have been a tough Wednesday. But if you just set the price action aside like I did because I wasn't even aware of it, this is a huge win, right? We did not know that it was going to happen in this year, right? And so now the whole camp of it's all coordinated at the DC level. that camp has grown a lot stronger, and their argument looks a lot more likely. So my predictions at the end of last year saying we're going to get 3 for 3 in the trifecta starting to look pretty good.
Yes.
You know, Germany's Pillar 2. That's another huge bit of news that I don't think gets kind of lost in the schedule thing. You know, it's coming along quicker than expected. A government doing something ahead of schedule. Like, that never happens. So, you know, it's good to see the German officials looking at Switzerland's pilot programs as a source of truth, trying to move that forward. It probably was the fact that I spoke to them directly in Germany. I'm sure that moved them ahead. And then, yeah, honestly, like,
Mungie Boy just had the greatest comment. He says the beard is growing faster than my portfolio.
Yeah, I'm a chia pet. Everybody knows. But yeah, I mean, we could get 3 out of 3 catalysts certainly with Safer, but I really recommend everyone, especially Anthony and the rest of the folks at home, to watch. I posted it this morning, a video that was recorded with Howard Sklamberg and you know, the person who authored the Cole memo, Mr. Cole himself. And these are the former deputy AG, Mr. Cole, and the former deputy FDA official in charge of the working group in cannabis, Sklamberg. And so I trust what they're saying more than pretty much anyone else on Twitter. Shane P's watching this one real closely, for instance.
Yeah.
And they had some really interesting things to say that everyone in the industry would love to see. And the thing has like 100 views on YouTube. Okay. So we're early. We know about this stuff. He talked about the timing of the AG memo looking like it's going to coincide with the final order, the Schedule 3 becoming law. There will have to be a lot of clarity.
Where is this video?
It's right on my Twitter stream. It's about 30 minutes long, and it is phenomenal. He also speculates, Cole, that, you know, if you make a memo, you know, every 10 years you should update it. So I'm paraphrasing it, but he said they should talk to state officials, see what some of the challenges they're having, and essentially update what he wrote. Sklamberg dismissed the fear that Schedule 3 will cause an uptick in enforcement from 3-letter agencies on state legal cannabis businesses. So everyone's worried, oh, Schedule 3 is going to mean more enforcement. He was saying not bloody likely. So take a look at that. And Sklamberg also dismissed the fear that Schedule 3 will only cause 280E to go away from medical cannabis companies only, or that portion of the business only. There's no guarantees in this life, but you know, when the guy who was in charge of prosecution in this cases, you know, is saying this, or the you know, the former FDA deputy commissioner saying this, everyone should listen and factor that into their percentage chances.
I think we think too much at times in this industry.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I've never seen a sector that is more in tune with the day-to-day kind of ups and downs of headlines. One yikes headline from Marijuana Moment today sends it down 4%. You know, we are we're asking for a level of transparency that's unheard of. I mean, so we get CEOs on Twitter. We're expecting to know about every little memo crossing the desks of 3-letter agencies. I mean, come on, folks. Like, let the process play out. And here's my bold prediction. You ready for this one?
Let's hear it.
Joe Biden, in his State of the Union, continues to say no one should be in prison for a plan. That's a hell of a thing to dangle out there for the people who have their fathers and brothers locked up. Okay?
Yeah.
So you are really going to disappoint a lot of really pissed off voters if you don't deliver on that with an executive order pre-election. If you dangle it out there as a carrot one more time, I'm telling you, I know I'm getting choked up, but like, that ain't going to play. So I predict an executive order, well-timed, should have done it within the first 60 days of office, sir. But
how much do you guys believe that this whole cannabis topic
decriminalize,
how much influence on the election? We talk about it a lot, but how much influence do you think it is?
Look, it's a super popular issue.
Small, Anthony?
I think it's bigger than Anthony thinks. I think it's a super popular issue, not amongst just us. But in terms of, you know, when it hits the Florida ballots, let's see what the populace thinks about recreational cannabis. This goes across bipartisan lines. When you have people locked up and you promise to get them out, you better fucking do it. Okay?
Yeah. That's a good point. That's a line that you cross where there's the point of no return. That's a pretty bold statement. And
no more virtue signaling.
You didn't do this on a Tuesday morning and a cup of coffee. It was a State of the Union address, which is pretty big. But we had Charlie Bachtell on last Friday, which was really encouraging, Anthony, when he predicted, yes, we do think rescheduling happens before the election. Once that
I think it happened. I think it happens. I think it absolutely happens by the end of the year. I just don't think it's as big as everybody thinks it is. At all.
Well, maybe it's not so big right now, but
Biden's got a giant.
Poll numbers go up 4%. But
Biden's got a giant Israel problem right now, and I don't think cannabis is going to counterbalance what the top 5 things that are going on with him right now, as it relates to international affairs, the border.
Yeah,
I do believe though that a bunch of other things that are orders of magnitude more important than cannabis. For him potentially getting reelected. It's a great headline, though. And I do think we get rescheduling done.
But I do know that the incompetent Prime Minister Justin Trudeau from Canada won an election based on legalizing weed back in 2015. And I think if a rescheduling announcement is made in due time and good enough time before the election, I think there's tremendous upside for him to get a lot of voters leading into that election, which is probably why it's a priority to some degree. But to your point, yes, there's some big issues going on that makes cannabis look small. But I know in the past, we've always said the downside is a lot more detrimental than the upside. I completely disagree with that. I think if rescheduling were to happen, and based on some of the responses on social media after the State of the Union address, there's a lot of momentum that could be picked up for this administration if something were to get done. And then who knows? We talk about incremental. Does this indeed put pressure for safe banking to pass? One guy I think we should have back on the podcast next week again is Don Murphy, just to get an update on that and see where things sit. But we are now over an hour in this podcast, so I should let everybody run. But it's been a great week. Don't forget, Sunday night, we are featuring another 3 to 4 small cap companies, including one cannabis company. Who are we highlighting? Village Farms. Village Farms with myself and the head of research, Bill McNarland. That's going live Sunday night, 8 o'clock, Small Cap Sundays with myself and Bill McNarland. As usual, if you want to have all the inside takeaways on the latest reports of all the companies that reported this week, log on to thedalesreport.com and subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. And as usual, as I don't have to keep saying, let's take this viral. Please, if you can, smash that like button. Leave lots of comments. Share this video with your network. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We very much appreciate it. Guap, good to see you again, my friend. Welcome back. Anthony, looks like you're going to play golf. Make sure you wear 2 pants.
I'm not going to play golf. I'm not golfing this afternoon.
No?
I'm sure as hell not golfing in long sleeves in Florida.
Oof. Have fun tonight. Sounds like you're going to have a good little time out with some key people. But it should be an interesting night until the Cop Squad that we say hi. And congrats, obviously, on his grand opening. In the meantime, gents, happy Friday. We'll see you back here Monday with Matt Darren and the crew, with Curaleaf, Dan Aarons, Jesse Channon on the Traded Black podcast. Have a great weekend, everyone.
See everybody on Monday.
No one should be in prison.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching our latest podcast. Lots of momentum building. You guys getting all excited? Leave comments below. Again, we want to take this viral. Smash that like button and make sure to click on that bell for all notifications as we start to bring on bigger and bigger guests. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, the Baked In newsletter, by logging on to thedalesreport.com. And we want to take this viral, as I said, and make this community grow. So make sure to subscribe on that channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everyone, for watching.